death reaction here in Washington on Capitol Hill. Pleased to welcome back to the program Republican strategist, president of Axe Advocacy, Ashlee Stephenson. Ashlee, Happy New Year, and what a way to begin 2026.
Steve, Happy New Year. An interesting couple of days. I heard on the last segment you were closing with a quip on the Steelers game from last night. As you know, I'm a Pittsburgher, Steve, so
I know you
I'm happy to begin my morning with that news. But look, in all seriousness, it's been an unbelievable couple of days. Obviously, wall-to-wall news on what's happening in Venezuela. And I think that this is a tremendous political win to start there, setting aside the legality of it that we heard argued exceptionally well from Bill Barr, who's a very serious and credible person here, given his role going back many years, starting with Noriega. Look, this shows real strength and incredible precision from our U.S. military to protect and defend ourselves from a government that was hurting and killing Americans, with whether it was the drug cartels to even organizing with some of our enemies like Russia and Iran. And this just needed to be put to an end, and the president did it perfectly and is rolling into 2026 operating from a position of strength.
And yet the question, Ashlee, is this administration prepared for what is now happening next? Who is actually going to run Venezuela? What is the role of the now new president, former vice president, handpicked by Maduro? What is the role of the opposition party and the opposition leaders inside Venezuela? And now you have the president saying, Colombia, Cuba, perhaps you are next. In Greenland, we need to take Greenland for America's defense. Do you have any concern that this is going to create a domino effect in the mind of President Trump on what he has the authority to do or not do?
Well, I'd put Greenland separate. And no, I have zero concerns here. I think that what we saw over the weekend, again, exceptional actions from our military, shows our adversaries and enemies and anybody else who is going to think about causing harm to the United States to perhaps think twice, because we now have a presidency in place that's not going to put up with it. So there's no telling, as you and I both know, Steve, very well, what the president is going to decide really week to week, even minute to minute, honestly, as it relates to engagement elsewhere. But we've seen an incredible amount of international action in this first year that's been to our benefit. So who knows where we are in a couple of weeks or 6 months from now, but it sent a very clear message to our adversaries. Think twice or you will pay a penalty.
Let's talk about the political component in all of this, because we're seeing Republican members like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is stepping down officially today, Lauren Boebert and others questioning the America First policies of Donald Trump, which he ran, not getting us involved in foreign wars and escalation of foreign wars. This is what the Georgia Republican, who again, her last day is today, told NBC News.
You know, America First should mean what was promised on the campaign trail in 2024. So my understanding of America First is strictly for the American people, not for the big donors that donate to big politicians, not for the special interests that constantly roam the halls in Washington, and not foreign countries that demand their priorities put first over Americans. America First actually means for the American people, and the American people have been put last consistently, decades and decades, by both political parties for far too long.
So, Ashlee, as you hear that again from a one-time staunch supporter of Donald Trump and says she still supports many of the Trump policies, what does this mean for the Republicans, for the MAGA movement, for President Trump moving forward?
Well, first of all, Marjorie Taylor Greene's comments over the weekend are not isolated. We're now weeks, if not months, of seeing a trend of her going on to the mainstream press, talking about all of her problems with the Trump administration. As you said, Steve, who was once a very, very staunch reporter, we know that they had a big public breakup. It's a political axe to grind coming from her. What this means for Republicans overall, look, I think that nobody's done a more tremendous job than Secretary of State Marco Rubio talking about protecting the Western Hemisphere. They've set out to do just that, and they've accomplished a great deal. And it is putting Americans first when we're stopping drug cartels and we're stopping trafficking into this country that's killing thousands and thousands of Americans each week. So that is an America First policy that's in our own backyard, practically, in the Western Hemisphere. And we cannot continue to allow, again, our adversaries, or those who certainly don't have our best interest first, whether it's Russia, China, Iran, or anybody else, to be engaging in South America the way that they have been, from an economic perspective to helping our adversaries. So I do actually think that this is putting America first. and the president following through and making good on something he said was very likely to happen.
You know, you cover politics, you understand strategy. I don't understand what Nicolas Maduro might have been thinking with the troops off the coast of Venezuela, with the president saying repeatedly, let's give you an exit ramp. Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying that they had offered him a couple of options, and yet he stayed in Caracas, and now he is in a New York City jail.
Well, I'm not an expert on the politics of Venezuela and certainly not of Maduro, but you don't want to end up in a New York City jail. That much is certain, Steve. So, you know, he challenged them and he lost. So we'll see what happens from here. Maybe life in prison. I don't know. But the good news out of this is America flexed its muscle. We have an extraordinary military that proves time and time again that there is nobody else like us on the planet who got in, got the job done, no casualties. And now the Western Hemisphere, and specifically the U.S., is going to be in a better place because of that. And this is what leadership is about. This is what the presidency should be about, and the terrific cabinet that helped make this happen, and of course the military. So Democrats and everybody else from an MTG or those who have a political axe to grind can be adversarial with the president. It gives them something to talk about. But at the end of the day, this is in the best interest of the United States, and we're going to see that play out.
It's also, as you well know, another reminder about the news cycle and how quickly things change from what we were talking about Friday to what we're talking about on a Monday. We're talking to Ashlee Stephenson, Republican strategist, president of Axe Advocacy. Let's talk about 2026. I want to, in a moment, talk about Governor Tim Walz. But as you look at the political landscape, I think it's a fair assumption, Charlie Cook of the Cook Political Report, thinking that Democrats have a pretty good chance of picking up the House, maybe not so for the U.S. Senate. It is early. It's only early January. But as you handicap the midterm elections with Congress, what do you think?
Well, the words of last year and probably still again this year, Steve, are going to be mid-decade redistricting. So we've seen that basically end up to be almost about a break even. I think Republicans are going to end up netting out maybe 3 or 4 seats overall when it's all said and done because of that exercise. But today, the generic ballot has Democrats up about 4 points if you go on Real Clear Politics. Put that into context, at the beginning of 2018, when Democrats won back the House during the first Trump presidency, their advantage on the generic ballot was about 11. So more than double what it is today. So I think if anything, if this were to go in the direction of Democrats because of the mid-decade redistricting and even the redistricting after 2020, maybe it's a couple of seats advantage at best. And we all know, and we're watching it play out in real time, you can't do a whole heck of a lot with that, and especially if you don't have the Senate. And I just don't see that as in play for Democrats today.
And of course, the big news today coming from Minneapolis, St. Paul, is Governor Tim Walz announcing he is not seeking a third term. We focused earlier on the scandal engulfing Minnesota involving child care and welfare payments. So far, 90 people have been arrested, charged in that case. This is what the governor told reporters in the last hour.
Like many Minnesotans, I have to tell you, I was glad to turn the page on 2025. It was an extraordinarily difficult year for our state, and it ended on a particularly sour note. For the last several years, an organized group of criminals have sought to take advantage of this state's generosity. And even as we make progress in the fight against the fraudsters, we now see an organized group of political actors seeking to take advantage of a crisis. I don't want to mince words here. Donald Trump and his allies in Washington and in St. Paul and online want to make our state a colder, meaner place. They want to poison our people against each other by attacking our neighbors. And ultimately, they want to take away much of what makes Minnesota the best place in the country to raise a family. They've already begun trying to withhold funds that were meant to help families afford child care. And they have no intention of stopping there.
That is Governor Tim Walz making it official. Certainly he saw the poll numbers collapsing in his bid for a third term. And Ashlee, already Senator Amy Klobuchar, her team thinking she may run for the seat. What are your overall thoughts about what happened and what's next?
Well, first of all, Steve, boy, did the country dodge a bullet by not electing Harris Walz to lead this nation. To see the way that he is going out after running to be the vice president, the number 2 in charge of the United States of America, is really a sad state of affairs for him. And of course, on his way out the door today is taking quips at President Trump and this administration. So look, I think it's just honestly terrible for Minnesotans overall and kind of pathetic politically at best for the governor. And honestly, I'm just not surprised. I do think that Klobuchar would be an extremely strong candidate for governor. And boy, wouldn't it be interesting to have 2 open U.S. Senate seats, an open governor's seat in Minnesota, a state that not all that long ago, well, maybe a little bit longer than we'd like, Steve, but Republicans were able to win statewide. So that's one of those Midwest states I'm always drawn to. And to think that someday there will be a chance for Republicans to win at some point again. And look, maybe it's closer than some of us had anticipated, recognizing 2026 could be a tough year for Republicans. But if you can get a great candidate to go into one of those Senate races, maybe there's a shot. And that's what I'm paying attention to and pretty excited about.
I think Tim Pawlenty was the last Republican to win statewide in Minnesota. And of course, if Klobuchar is elected governor, she can then select her successor because she'll have the ability to appoint a successor in 2027. But you're right, Tina Smith, who's not running for re-election, so that is an open seat in Minnesota. It's going to be an interesting statewide race to follow this year. Ashlee, thank you as always. Happy New Year. Hope you had a great holiday, and now your kids back to school and more normalcy in the Stephenson household, huh?
We're all grateful for it. Thank you, Steve, for having me, and I look forward to being back on soon.
I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the game last night. I was watching that same game. When I saw Aaron Rodgers in the face on the last, 2 seconds left, and then to miss the extra point for the Steelers, and then to miss that 3-point for the Ravens, I mean, it was just an unbelievable ending to the 2025 NFL season.
Unbelievable ending. I'm always so proud to be a Steeler fan, no matter the ups and downs. But as we all like to say, Steve, here we go. So it's on next Monday night against the Texans.
On ABC and ESPN.
Yeah.
Ashlee Rich Stephenson, sports fan, Steelers fan, and Republican strategist, president of Axe Advocacy. Thank you again.
Thanks.